The Derby10k is one of the largest sporting events that takes place in the city. It is hosted by the Derby Community Trust, which is the Derby County Football Club's community relations team. The 10K is one of the major fundraisers for the community trust. Their goal is to raise funds in order to continue the work they do in Derbyshire and around the world. The Community Trust's mission is to use the power of the Derby County Football Club to improve lives through sport, physical activity, and education. The aims of the Community Trust and the 10K is to help increase physical activity within the community, as well as raise funds for the Community Trust and a host of other local and regional organizations. The 10K generates around £70,000 in funds for the community. Following the Prime Minister's speech on March 16th, all sporting events have been postponed or cancelled indefinitely due to this pandemic. Within the global community, the United Kingdom is the fourth worst affected nation, with just over 200,000 confirmed cases as well as 30,000 deaths, with no confirmed recoveries. Taking the advice of the Prime Minister to enforce social distancing rules, DCCT were required to postpone the 10K, which was in accordance with other global and local sporting events decisions, as it came within days of the cancellation of various other global sporting events. Events such as the Penn Relays, Boston Marathon, and Barclay Marathons were also postponed, with the first two cases of the coronavirus being reported on January 1st. The DCCT's decision to postpone the event on March 16th may have seemed late, but in the context of other major events, the timing was spot on. The management team at the Community Trust waited on an official statement on behalf of the government before they made the decision on whether to postpone or cancel the event, which keeps them aligned with government practice. The coronavirus pandemic has put a strain on sporting events worldwide. Events such as the England and Wales Cricket Board new franchise tournament, which was due to start on July 17th, has been postponed until next year. The World Para-Athletics Championship, were due to be commenced in September of 2021 in Japan, has also been rescheduled to the year 2022. More notably, the Ligue 1 and Ligue 2 have both been completely cancelled following this decision by the LFP to ban all sporting events, including behind doors, until September. Major events such as Euro 2020 were also postponed in the light of this pandemic. The Community Trust announced a new date for the 10K, which was on the 24th of April. This new working date is October 25th, 2020. In order to help reduce the impact of this soon-to-be economic crisis, the Community Trust has given participants the option to either confirm their place in the race if they still wish to participate, or to transfer their place to a different competitor. Also, they have chosen to accept new entries as well, according to their organization website. The Community Trust are also offering full refunds to participants who no longer wish to run. According to Coombs and Halliday, for such popular events, the audience should be used as the epicenter of crisis communications. Keeping this in mind, the Community Trust announced the postponement of the 10K on their official sites, such as Twitter and Facebook, as well as the Community Trust website. The fact that the Community Trust only used these three ways of communicating their postponement leaves for a communication gap. Social sites like Instagram and YouTube could have helped relay the messages more effectively, in comparison to other events such as the Boston Marathon, who have used YouTube, Facebook, as well as Twitter and Instagram. The postponement of the 10K aligns with many other running events such as the Tokyo Marathon, which was due to take place on the 1st of March. The Tokyo Marathon also offered the option to defer entry for the 2021 race. Also, events such as the New York Marathon, Barcelona Marathon, as well as the Boston Marathon has postponed their events. Each of these races offer the same options for participants as well. With this strategy, the DCCT can look to keep most of the sponsorships as well as maintain the number of participants in the race. If the event was cancelled, DCCT could have lost large amounts of potential income. They might have lost sponsorships and partners for the next 10K event. Without the 10K taking place, the DCCT could also lose vital funds needed to carry out and achieve their objectives for the year as far as community outreach and sport participation. Crisis management is the process of identifying threats to an organization and their stakeholders, and the methods used by the organization to deal with these threats. Being that the coronavirus is a never-seen-before occurrence, the Community Trust had to come up with a new crisis management plan. The community trust kept in compliance with an effective risk crisis management by taking the best course of action in relation to canceling or postponing the event. Also, they took action based on the advice of the local government and were effective in communicating these processes with potential stakeholders. The community trust had been monitoring the decisions made by government whilst simultaneously communicating to the public their processes. By doing this, the community trust kept completely transparent with the public in relation to their rationale behind postponing the event and the new working date. A good structure for both risk and crisis management is to maximize the ability to act and minimizes the losses, according to Walker. On the part of the community trust, they have had a good risk and crisis plan. This is because they kept in constant contact with their partners to ensure that they will remain partners, even in the event that the 10K was postponed. Their best hopeful outcome for this situation was always to try and maintain the number of participants for the race. In our group meetings with Emma Pilgrim, this was discussed, as well as communication with sponsors. In this case of strategic impact, the community trust put actions into place to retain sponsors as well as participants. Furthermore, the risk and crisis plan allowed them to maintain their goals and objectives. The main stakeholders which will be affected are the runners, volunteers, and sponsors. A concern for the runners is the fact that some of them may not be able to participate in the race on the deferred date. DCCT has given these participants an option to defer their ticket to another participant as to not lose their donation, as well as to provide the best experience for the stakeholders. Also, they have been able to reopen registration to ensure that participants who were unable to make the original date cannot participate. Volunteers may be impacted because they may not be in Derby for the proposed date. Many volunteers for the 10K are studying at the university, which means that the new date of October 25th may not be suitable for students who may be currently finishing their third year. An alternative method for carrying out the 10K could have been to encourage participants to use their treadmills at home if they had one. This method could have retained participation by holding a virtual 10K marathon. It would also have been a unique and new experience for the potential participants. Also, it may have helped to reduce costs by negating the use of fire and rescue services as well as other emergency service. The fact that the 10K had been postponed is not necessarily a bad occurrence, being that all of the sponsors will stay partnered even for the second date. However, the postponement or cancellation of an event can also be considered a failure. Event failures and sporting event cancellations can also have severe negative impacts for organizers and local residents, as well as whole destinations, according to Peretz and Vidicic. The fact that the event was postponed can potentially have adverse effects on the legacy of said event. For example, Pirich and Vidicic state that it is therefore reasonable to assume that the cancellation of a sporting event will cause impacts that are opposite to those of successful events. This means that local residents could suffer from missed opportunities to meet new people, decreased community spirit, decreased employment, volunteering, and learning opportunities, and from not having fun at that event. In conclusion, the community trust was quick and effective in their crisis and risk management plan, which in turn helped them to make their decisions in accordance to global and UK government. In terms of communication with stakeholders and participants, they was effective and quick with relaying their information, though they could have used more channels of communication such as YouTube and Instagram. The decision to postpone the event rather than cancel the event helped the community trust to maintain course to achieve their goals and objectives by retaining participants and sponsors for the working date. The processes of action were intuitive, concise, and practical for this situation. It provided the best possible outcome for the DCCT and the 10K as it retains both participants and sponsors through the course of this global pandemic. They monitored the situation from its beginning in order to make their announcements on time. In terms of legacy, this may be a memorable 10K for the simple fact of the coronavirus and it taking place in autumn rather than spring, which may lead to a total restructure of the event. Also, in terms of participants, it may be a growth in numbers post-pandemic due to the fact that some of the participants were unable to register for the original date. This could help the community trust to recoup some of the funds that were lost due to the pandemic and use those excess funds for future projects to help the community and globally.